Former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, once a towering figure in the northern politics of the nation, is now facing one of the most turbulent chapters of his career. His highly anticipated arraignment before the Federal High Court in Abuja on cybercrime and national security charges was scheduled for today, that's February 25th. But the proceedings never took off. The DSS insists El-Rufai was never in its custody, while reports suggest he remains detained under unclear circumstances. The court has now shifted the arraignment to April 23, 2026, prolonging a saga that is already stirring fierce debate about accountability, political vendettas, and the rule of law. Adding to the drama, disturbing accounts have emerged from the detention as aides allege El-Rufai suffered a nosebleed and that his wife was prevented from delivering meals to him, fueling questions about his treatment and transparency of the process. Well, joining the conversation right now to discuss this is our guest, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, is a human rights lawyer and former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Thank you for your time. It's great to have you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
All right. Let me, of course, start by asking, around, the angle of human rights. El-Rufai, for instance, we know that the agencies, of course, are pressing charges, but El-Rufai is also suing back, for instance, suing the ICPC, seeking 1 billion naira in damages for alleged unlawful invasion of his Abuja residence, amongst a plethora of other issues. Before we get into, the weight of these challenges, looking at it from the angle of the Constitution in terms of his rights here, would you say any of these agencies have exceeded their boundaries?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Because I don't want to make it, I'm not in a position and I wouldn't want to make any dispositive observations based on an incomplete appreciation of the facts. So I want to be careful about what I say here. So what is clear is that Nasir El-Rufai is currently in detention with an agency. I do not know under what authority. There are, first of all, obviously, there are powers of arrest. It seems to me agencies have exercised powers of arrest. Arrest, of course, is different from detention, which is the power to keep somebody. The Constitution is very clear as to the circumstances in which the duration of detention, which is up to 48 hours, unless, of course, there is authorization to hold further the person. There's judicial authorization, and you can obtain judicial authorization from a magistrate, for instance. I do not know whether that has been exercised, so I don't want to say here yes or no to that. I'm just outlining, broadly speaking, the procedures under which detention beyond the 48-hour period can be called said to be lawful or unlawful. As to the conditions in detention, I cannot say. There are allegations as to what has transpired or what has not transpired. I think I'm obliged to say, given the way that Mr. El-Rufai conducted himself when he was governor of Kaduna State, that none of this comes close to how he treated the people whom he arranged to have abducted or detained. And I remember in 2020, 5 years after Sheikh El-Zakzaki had been arrested and detained, 5 years into his detention, following the Zaria massacre of 2015, which happened under the watch and patronage of Mr. El-Rufai, he went public to say that he could not release Sheikh El-Zakzaki, notwithstanding that Sheikh El-Zakzaki had had 3 of his sons killed in the Zaria massacre. His sight was failing, his health was failing, he needed urgent medical attention. He was gloating that the man was in detention and could not be released. I do not, let me be quite clear, I don't wish the same on anybody who is detained. I believe that the standards of the Constitution should be obeyed. And if anybody treated Mr. El-Rufai with half or a fraction of the brutality and disdain for human life and dignity that he treated his critics and perceived enemies, real or imagined, when he was in power, nothing will be heard of him. But I don't wish that upon him. I should be clear.
I mean, of course, the former governor has a pretty much controversial political, will I call it, a trajectory. But there's also, concerns around the issues of political witch hunt and public accountability. Many are asking, why now? Why is it that, the elections are just around the corner, he's on the opposition, one of the loud voices, and all of a sudden, he's been held? Do you, I would like your take as regards that issue of political witch hunt versus public accountability, which seems to play out here.
Well, in Nigeria, whenever a big man is arrested, it's political witch hunt. When a poor person is, a hungry poor person is arrested and jailed for stealing a tuber of yam and put in jail for 5 years, we call it justice, right? But when a rich person is arrested for doing what they should never have thought of doing, for us is political witch hunt. It's quite simply does not make sense, but it reflects a Nigerian mentality that believes that rule of law or justice, accountability is for poor people and rich people are beyond the reach of law. I like to hope that we should all aspire to a country in which every person is subject to law, irrespective of what status they have or what office they have held. We're witnessing in the United Kingdom as we speak the defenestration of the eighth in line to the throne, formerly known as Prince Andrew. We're witnessing the defenestration of the immediate past ambassador to the United States, one of the most powerful politicians of his generation in the United Kingdom, Peter Mandelson. Nobody is talking about political witch hunt in those situations. An entire parliamentary session devoted to rendering the former Prince Andrew quite naked before the people of the United Kingdom. That was considered acceptable. Now, in Nigeria, that will not take place because everybody will say, oh, there's a political witch hunt. Now, the fact of the matter is that every legal system has constraints on its capacity to investigate every case that comes to it or every complaint that comes to it. And so choices will have to take place. Prioritization has to take place. Sometimes that takes time. Some other times it happens swiftly. Whether at any point in time, we're either ahead of elections or behind elections. That, I think, should not determine whether or not a case should be prosecuted. Everything should be based on the evidence. If they have good enough evidence, can they please proceed? If they don't have good enough evidence, I hope they call it to a halt.
All right, my follow-up question to that would be, how do you think this current administration, has treated or has handled opposition? I'm talking about political parties right now, and even individuals that have maybe a diverse opinion as on issues and policies as against what the current administration, seems to project.
Political opposition cannot beg the administration for space to operate. Political opposition invariably has to force issues with the administration that it seeks to oppose. That is the way political opposition works everywhere. No administration, no matter how liberal-minded it is, makes things easy for opposition. That means that those who are in power today have got to understand that power is temporary, power is transient, and they've got to conduct themselves in such a way that if they were to find themselves in opposition tomorrow, they will not have enough skeletons in their cupboards or any skeletons in their cupboards that will make them hostage to fortune. That is, I believe, what the problem is with Mr. El-Rufai. He's left so many skeletons in the cupboard that it is difficult for him to go around TV studios as he's doing, hurling things wherever he can, moving his mandibles as, as recklessly as he's wont to do. I do think this is a problem. People who find themselves in power in Nigeria have got to step back and be a lot more responsible than they conduct themselves with. And look, this applies to even the people who are in power today. Tomorrow, they will leave power. Someday, they will leave power. And when they do, my hope is that, people will not come after them based on what they have done today.
All right. Just a quick one before we go on a break. Let's also look at this from the angle of what the implication might be in lieu of 2027. There are some that believe that with everything El-Rufai is going through and his political, clout in the north, there might be, I call it a ripple effect, maybe a number of votes or perception of the ruling party. Do you foresee any political, I call it fallback as a result of everything that is happening to the former governor?
We'll live to see. Look, my sense is that Nigerians are so hungry that there are no messiahs for whom they are willing to die. People are so busy looking after themselves in terms of what to eat or running away from kidnappers or looking for ransom to pay that they are not willing to immolate themselves on behalf of yesterday's messiah. By the way, El-Rufai is not the only person who held political office or who is a former governor. Peter Obi from Anambra State is a former governor. How many people are talking about arresting him for what he did while he was in office? Raji Fashola is a former governor in Lagos. How many people are talking about arresting him for what he did in office? So I do think that every case has got to be judged on its own merits. And maybe, whether or not there is politics in the air, Mr. El-Rufai may have done things that justify people looking to hang and quarter him. I don't know. Let the facts speak for themselves.
All right. Thank you so much for your time on the program this evening. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Professor Chidi Odinkalu is a human rights lawyer and also former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Once again, thank you for your time.